Hello, everyone. Jonathan Valentin here, author of the book The Wounded King, and now presenting to you guys my second book, The Return of the King. I'm in the process of reading for you guys chapter 6. Chapter 6 is Brotherhood or Isolation. You guys ready? Here we go. James has spent many years trying to understand masculinity by observing the world around him. He watched culture debate it, watched men perform it, and watched others abandon it altogether. But one truth began to stand out the longer he paid attention. Many men were trying to figure out life alone. This realization did not arrive all at once. It emerged slowly through conversations, quiet observations, and patterns he began noticing in the lives of the men around him. Men rarely spoke honestly about their struggles. They talk about sports, about work, and joke about relationships, but very few conversations ever reach the deeper questions. What kind of a man are you becoming? Where are you failing? What are you responsible for? Where do you need correction? Those questions required vulnerability, and vulnerability between men had become rare. James began to recognize a strange paradox in modern life. Men were more connected digitally than any generation in history. Yet, many were profoundly isolated. Phones allowed constant communication. Social media created endless interaction. Online platforms gave men the ability to share their thoughts with thousands of people. But very few of those interactions created genuine brotherhood. Brotherhood requires proximity. It requires accountability. It requires the kind of honesty that cannot be performed through a screen. Historically, masculine formation happened within close relational structures. Fathers train sons. Older men mentor younger ones. Craftsmen train apprentices. Warriors train alongside other warriors. Farmers work fields together. Men sharpened one another through shared labor and shared responsibility. Isolation was rare because survival itself required cooperation. But the modern world had quietly dismantled many of those environments. Work had become increasingly individual. Technology allowed tasks to be completed alone. Entertainment had become private rather than communal. A man could spend an entire evening isolated in his home while feeling connected to hundreds of people online. But connection without accountability does not produce growth. James had experienced seasons of this isolation himself. They were years when he believed he could develop as a man through personal discipline alone. Read the right books, work hard, avoid destructive habits, improve steadily, and in many ways, those habits did help him grow. But personal discipline without relational sharpening eventually reaches a limit. A man cannot see every blind spot in his own life. Over time, James encountered men who challenged him directly, not harshly, but honestly. They asked questions that forced reflection. They noticed inconsistencies. They pointed out areas where his thinking needed refinement. At first, those conversations felt uncomfortable. No man enjoys being corrected. But James soon realized that these moments of sharpening were among the most valuable experiences he had ever encountered. Correction from a wise man is not humiliation, it is refinement. One mentor in particular had a habit of asking simple questions that were difficult to answer. Why are you doing that? What responsibility are you avoiding? Are you seeking approval or alignment? These questions forced James to examine motives he might have otherwise ignored. Slowly, he began to understand something clearly. Isolation allows a man to believe his own excuses. Brotherhood removed that luxury. A good brother does not allow you to hide behind your justifications. He challenges them. He asks for clarity. He expects growth. James realized that many men avoided brotherhood for this very reason. Accountability is uncomfortable. Isolation offers freedom from correction. But that freedom comes at a cost. Without accountability, discipline weakens. Without discipline, responsibility becomes negotiable. Without responsibility, masculinity begins to drift. As James observed the men he respected most, he noticed a consistent pattern. Nearly all of them were surrounded by strong brotherhood. They were connected to men who challenged them spiritually, morally, and intellectually. They prayed together. They worked together. They spoke openly about their failures and their progress. There was no need for performance. Respect replaced competition. Growth replaced image. These relationships were fundamentally different from the superficial friendships many men maintain. Superficial friendships avoid tension, while brotherhood embraces it. Superficial friendships protect comfort, while brotherhood protects character. Superficial friendships celebrate success, while brotherhood confronts failures. This kind of sharpening is not always pleasant, but it is essential. The ancient proverb, iron sharpens iron, described this process perfectly. Two pieces of iron striking against each other to create friction. That friction produces sparks, but it also produces sharpness. Without it, the blade becomes dull. James realized that many modern men had become dull, not because they lack potential, but because they lack sharpening. Without brotherhood, discipline becomes fragile. Temptation grows stronger. A man begins to believe his own rationalizations. James remembered conversations with men who had struggled silently for years with habits they were ashamed to discuss: pornography, addiction, bitterness, anger, isolation. Many had tried to overcome these struggles alone, but secrecy feeds weakness. Confession creates accountability, and accountability creates change. James saw firsthand how powerful it was when men spoke honestly with one another. Walls came down, masks disappeared. The performance ended. What remained was real growth. Brotherhood accomplished something isolation never can. It reminds a man that he is not the only one fighting. Every man faces battles. Every man carries weaknesses. Every man struggles with responsibility at times. But when men face those struggles together, something powerful happens. Strength multiplies. James began to see brotherhood as one of the missing ingredients in the restoration of masculinity. Cultural debates would continue. Ideological conflicts will continue. But if men could rebuild genuine brotherhood, many of the struggles they face individually would become easier to overcome collectively. Brotherhood does not remove responsibility, it strengthens it. A man surrounded by strong brothers is far less likely to drift into passivity. He knows others are watching, encouraging, correcting, and expecting more of him. But James also realized something humbling. Brotherhood requires humility. A man must be willing to admit he does not have all the answers. He must be willing to receive correction. He must be willing to listen. Pride isolates. Humility builds brotherhood. James had spent years trying to become strong, but he has beginning to understand that strength did not mean standing alone. It means standing alongside other men who were pursuing the same responsibility. Men who refuse to let one another drift. Men who understood that masculinity is not proven through dominance, but through faithfulness. The restoration of masculinity will not happen through individual heroes. It would happen through brotherhood. Through men who sharpen one another. Through men who remind each other of their responsibilities. Through men who refuse to allow silence and isolation to define their lives. Something shifted in James as he realized this. For years, he had viewed masculinity as an individual pursuit. Now he understood it as a communal one as well. No man builds a stable life entirely alone. And the men who claim they do are often the ones struggling the most. James did not know exactly what the future would hold. But he knew one thing clearly. If masculinity was to be rebuilt in his generation, men will need to find one another again, not as competitors, but as brothers. Because isolation weakens men. Brotherhood strengthens them. And strength shared amongst brothers can rebuild what isolation slowly destroyed. Thank you so much for watching. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, share the video with somebody who you know. This is Jonathan Valentin, author of the book, The Return of the King, reading Chapter 6, Brotherhood or Isolation. Thank you very much. See you on the next one.